Hey everybody, Lawrence here with Dirty Basement Terrain, coming at you with another video. Now, a while ago I was staring at my terrain shelves, and I realized I don't have a whole lot of buildings, and the ones I do have are kind of small. I have two little small farmhouses, I have a hag's hut, and Baba Yaga's hut. That's it. I have a couple partially done towers. Everybody has something that's not done. But um, So yeah, I'm gonna make some buildings, and especially being that I have these templates that I bought from Dungeons by Hand, I was like, okay, let's use those and make some buildings. I mean, you saw the review I did, at least I hope you did, of them. So yeah, and this is the final product that I made. So yeah, I don't know what kind of style you would call this. I just thought, hey, that looks good. I'm gonna make that. So this is a two-parter. This is part one. Um, it's a bit long one, but I didn't want to really cut so much out that you didn't see any of the steps that I did take. So, hope you guys enjoy this, and let's get to it. Here I'm going to be using some 3-inch XPS. I'm grabbing a 5x5 house front template that I got from Dungeons by Hand. And like I said, I'm using some push pins here just to securely hold it to the foam so it won't shift too much while I'm cutting it with my procs on. I'm going to cut 3 sections like this because I want a 9-inch long house. So again, I'm going to cut 3 sections of the 3-inch thick foam. And I want some bump outs to this house so it doesn't look like the birdhouse. So I'm using a 3x3 house front template from Dungeons by Hands. And I'm going to cut 2 out so I can have a bump out on either side of the house I'm making. And here I want the bump outs to get as smooth and as close to the larger section, the main section of the house, as I can. So I'm going to have to cut a curve to the bump out part. So I'm just going to use the 5x5 template and just draw out the curve I need. And there you go. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it works. This is pretty simple. I'm just hot gluing the larger sections together so I can get my 9-inch long top part of the house. And here I'm just kind of double checking, and then I'm going to hot glue the 2 bump out sections. As you can see, I'm lining the points up with one in between 2 of the larger sections. Pretty simple. And here I'm cutting out the first floor of the house. It's just a simple block. I think I'm cutting it maybe 4.5 inches wide by, what did I cut? Like 8.5 inches long. So, like I said, it's a pretty simple block. And as you can see, it fits pretty well, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it up here. And I'm going to use a Sharpie to trace out where I want to place it for when I glue it to the second floor. And here I'm hot gluing the first floor to the second floor. Pretty simple process, but that's how I'm doing it. And here I'm just measuring out 3 inches so I can cut a 3x3 inch chunk of foam so I can get the first floor ready for the bump outs. It's a pretty simple thing. I have 3-inch foam, so I'm cutting it 3 inches wide. And now I want to check the length of the bump outs. Each are slightly different, so I'm just doing each separately, 1 and 2. Yeah, I know. I just drew on my Proxon, but it'll wipe off before long, so it's no big deal. And here I have the one side measured out, so I'm just going to cut it quick. Pretty simple process. I mean, mark it with number 2 for the number 2 side. And now I'm going to check the other side and do the same thing. And here I am checking to just make sure it fits. Perfect fit. And now I'm going to be cutting off a 1/2 inch of 3 of the sides, but not the side that attaches to the building itself, because I am going to be adding bricks and other elements to this, so it needs space. As you can see, it's real simple, 1/2 inch. And I am marking the 3 sides like that just so I don't accidentally cut all 4 sides. This is pretty simple. I'm just kind of lining it up to where it's going to go. Use a Sharpie to mark it, and then blob on some hot glue, and then attach it on in. And kind of make sure it's flat to the bottom. Give it a minute to cool, and then this part will be done. Okay, I have a bunch of bricks that I've made out of scrap way ahead of time, so this is what I'm going to be using. They're 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch size bricks. I'm going to be using hot glue for the first bit of bricks like that, and then after that I'm going to switch over to PVA. If you use hot glue on the first one, it'll make each successive layer a lot easier to deal with because you won't have to wait. But once you won't have to wait doing the first round with the hot glue, like as seen here. Successive layers, I'm just brushing on some PVA, and then I'm going to be putting on the bricks. It's like, this can be tedious, it really can be, but the result is well worth it. And now I'm cutting off a thin sheet, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch thick slice of foam for the doors, which you'll see in a moment how I make. Now I'm using some graphics medium chipboard for the doors. I think they're 1.5 inches by 2 inches tall, wide by 2 inches tall. And it's a simple process of just cutting it out then.
I'm using an X-Acto blade just to follow along the lines. You'll get decent straight cuts by doing it this way. Here it's just a simple matter of brushing some PVA onto the chipboard and then sandwiching it onto the thin sheet of foam I made. Then after that happens, I'm going to trim away the foam, so all I have left is the foam and the chipboard for the door. I'm not going to texture it yet. I'm going to let the glue dry just in case there's a bit of warping with the chip. Now we're going to start making some shingles. I'm just straightening up that end, but I'm cutting it at a bunch of thin strips, as thin as possible, maybe as thin as a 32nd of an inch, but no more than a 1/16 of an inch thick. I want these shingles, as, like I said, as thin as possible without them falling apart when I texture them. So, just a bunch of strips, and here I'm using a plastic bristled stiff brush and just running it back and forth to get groove lines like you see. Now that I have it all the different layers textured, it's time to actually start cutting them. Gonna cut some thin strips, and I'm gonna cut them each individual down to 1/2 inch wide or inch long. Right now I'm just doing the inch long strips, at least I think. And I'm going to stack them up and measure down to 1/2 inch. And then start cutting, and there we have our shingles. Now I am going to do something to make the ends a little bit more shingly looking, I guess. Just basically rough up the edges, cut a small, just grooves and stuff, just to make them look more natural, I guess. I'm not sure, but it looks good. Okay, to add the shingles to the roof, I'm just grabbing a handful, gluing, and after brushing on some PVA, I'm just slowly placing them one at a time. This process can be honestly very tedious, but the end result looks really good. It's just a matter of running row after row and then offsetting the next row so the line doesn't go all the way through. But the only difficult part about this really is when I get to the bump outs, I will have to trim a shingle so it matches the curve there. But that's the actually hardest part of this. But with this, put on some good music or a podcast or another crafting video. But just it is going to take time to get this done. But the end result looks awesome, and at least I think so. Okay, here I'm cutting out a second door because I did want to put a second door to the building. Originally, I was only going to do one in the front, but I decided one of the bump outs should have a door. So I'm going to be cutting up another piece of the graphics medium chipboard at 2 inches tall by 1.5 inches wide, and then glue it on to one of the thin sheets of XPS that I made. Now, honestly, I forgot to record the texturing part of the door, but that's just a simple matter of using that plastic stiff bristled brush that I had and then running a bunch of grooves for a wood grain pattern, and then taking a pencil and then running down a couple lines so it actually looks like individual boards. But that's the only part I didn't record, so... And I do apologize for that, but... This was a long one. Long project to make. So... And here I'm just cutting out a tiny square for where the door handle is going to go, and then just gluing it on with some PVA. And here I'm using some pieces I got from the jewelry section at Michael's, I think. They're just, one's a split ring, I think they're called, and I'm not honestly even sure what the other is. It's just basically like a 2-inch piece of wire with a hook, like a circle hook on it. And I'm going to try and push it through where the little square went, but it's being stubborn. And I mean really stubborn. So I'm going to take a pin-like tool and then just push a hole through. And now I'm going to push that wire through so I have that like hanging handle. And now I'm actually gotta do the top pieces of the shingles. It's just a matter of bending them in half and then placing them on top, one after the other. I wait to do this now to let all the other shingles dry first. Why? Honestly, I don't know, but I just did. And now it's time to start working on all the wood timber work on the project. I'm cutting out some quarter inch by quarter inch XPS because I'm going to need some long pieces of timber. And the thing